What is up, plant people? Hey, today is Wednesday, June 2nd, 2021, and we're back with another episode of the Planthropology Podcast, the show where we dive into the lives, careers, and general awesomeness of some wonderful plant people. I'm Vikram Baliga, your host and humble guide in this journey through the sciences and through nature and through maybe our anthropological connection to the environment. It's Wednesday because I didn't get the episode done in time for Tuesday. Monday was Memorial Day. And I honestly, this weekend didn't do anything. That's not true. We did some home repair projects. We painted my son's room. I fixed more plumbing issues than I care to think about, but I didn't get all this stuff done. And so, it's a day late, but it is worth the wait. So today I have another tree guy named Joe. It's going to be a theme, I think. I will not stop till I've interviewed every tree guy named Joe. So with me today is Joe Buck. No, not that one. The better one, with whom I have found a kindred spirit. And you'll hear as we go through this episode and as you listen through this, that Joe and I have so many similar life experiences. And the directions we went with our lives is so similar in a lot of ways based on our experiences. It was just really just such a cool conversation. I found Joe on Twitter a while back, which is where I found so many of the great guests that you have heard from up to this point. And I connected with this guy and we kind of chatted a little bit, and I cannot wait to become better friends with Joe and try to talk with him more and maybe just be like non-podcast friends too. Is that desperate? I hope that doesn't sound desperate. I like having friends. And Joe is just such a genuine, smart, just wonderful guy. We talk about everything from what we did in school and what he did in school and where life takes you through that to some of Joe's struggles and triumphs with his mental health journey. And he's very open and honest about that. And it's really cool to hear him to talk about how he got through some of the struggles. And we talk about fire ecology and we talk about climate change and the future. And I was left recording this episode and editing this episode with so much hope and joy about the future of this planet with people like Joe on it. So I hope you are ready to listen. I hope you're ready to be inspired by what is really just such a wonderful episode. So buckle up, get ready to count some tree rings as we talk about dendrochronology, mental health, experiences in school, and so many other things in this episode of Planthropology with my new friend, Joe Buck. All right. Well, we're back with another episode of Planthropology, and sticking with our tradition of talking to tree guys named Joe, I'm here with Joe Buck, who does all kinds of cool stuff, from fire ecology to dendrochronology and studying and writing a thesis and all kinds of cool stuff, and recording from a house that thankfully didn't burn down, all kinds of cool stuff. So, Joe, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good. Yeah, you're right. I mean, I had a kind of a nearing harrowing experience, but it was all avoided, thankfully. And now I'm just, in the process of, getting breaker mains replaced and getting fire smoke smell out of the house. And
oh my goodness,
that's all good. Hey, I study fire, kind of, so
yeah.
So why not?
Yeah, sure. Sure. It's for science, but no, I'm glad y'all are doing all right, and I appreciate you still recording. I know that's probably been a stressful few days, but
yeah, no, it's all good. We've got a generator, so provided it doesn't run out of diesel, I think I'm good.
Well, I'll know if you just disappear halfway through this. I'll know what happened. Well, again, thanks so much for being on. So introduce yourself. Tell us about, where you grew up, what you studied in school, all that fun stuff.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I was born in Ardmore, Oklahoma.
Okay.
I've got a ton of family still down there. And when I was about 4, we moved to Shawnee, Oklahoma. And then a little bit later, I moved to Meeker, Oklahoma. So shout out to all my, past past homes. uh, and then yeah, so I grew up in Meeker, and really small town, graduating class around like 74ish. I knew everyone in the school, because that's just how it is. It's how small it was. And yeah, so I grew up, went to right out of that, I went to Oklahoma Christian University, and got a business degree, and kind of jumped right into family business kind of stuff in the oil field. I grew up in, or in Oklahoma and probably Texas. We call it the oil field, right? And
Yep.
yeah, there's no oil. It's just oil.
Just
And
oil.
so tried, yeah, did that, did kind of the family business route. And, I, it just wasn't jiving with a lot of my values, kind of who I was as a environmentalist. Well, I should say I wasn't active, environmentally friendly individual.
Hmm.
And yeah, I wanted more, wanted something completely different. And so we did. My wife and I we moved, kind of did like this community neighborhood worker thing in Australia, and did that for about a year and a half, and loved that. I loved the community. It was in a kind of a high unemployment, low income community, and it was just so great because every day was all about helping others. That was it. Like, that was the goal every day.
Yeah.
And so I really cultivated a lot of gratitude, a lot of like kind of more of a therapeutic mindset, thinking about others, and how am I going to help them today? And so doing, of course, it helped myself. I mean, like, I became a much better person, much more tolerable person probably to be around, and so on and so forth. And we came back, and it was kind of disarray when we moved back, because kind of had that culture shock when we went, but it was a lot of kind of that, I don't know if reverse culture shock is a thing.
Sure.
But that's kind of how it was. You come back, uh and it was just kind of like, man, I miss a lot of things about Australia, or kind of became our norm, and then it wasn't, it was gone. So we had to grieve that, and all, and that kind of introduced me to a lot of beginnings of some mental health aspects that were neglected from my life. But anyways, we just kind of charged past all of that, and I went back to family business because it's what I had.
Yeah.
And anyways, did that for a little bit longer, and just said, oh God, this needs to be done. I need something else. And I have always loved biology,
Okay.
always. All throughout, was reading tons of books, and lots of more like popular science, type
Yeah.
type
Yeah.
books and magazines, that kind of thing. And anyways, yeah, I decided to go back to school, and I don't even remember how old I was whenever I went back, late 20s, and got another bachelor degree. Then did my master's. I'm doing my master's, I should
Yeah.
say. I've been doing that for a while now, and so didn't really know in undergrad what I was going to do. Just knew that I loved. Well, I went initially. I was going to be an engineer, and
Huh.
yeah. I took Calc 1. That was it. That's all. That's as far as I made it. And I realized, like, if Calc 1 is this big of a struggle, I don't think engineering is supposed to be like what Joe Buck is supposed to be. And so, yeah, and I took a biology class by this amazing undergrad. This was at a community college. Um, uh, yeah, this amazing guy. His name was Julian Hilliard,
Okay.
and shout out to him. It was from Oklahoma City Community College, and my goodness, man, it was just like, yeah, this, like, why not? This is what I loved as a child, and this is what I love now. And all along, the answer was just right there.
Yeah.
And so,
Well,
yeah, I went with it, and yeah. then that kind of became my undergraduate passion, was just pursuing that biology degree. Go
Well, and
ahead. Sorry.
no. That's great. I think it's funny that's it. It takes, how do I say this? It takes finding out sometimes what you don't want to do to realize what you do want to do. Because I started in engineering too, and kind of a very similar story. Some of it was me finding out that I didn't want to do it, and some of it was my engineering program saying, "Are you sure this is what you want to do?" And I was like, "Well, apparently it's not."
Yeah.
And and then I got into plants and all that. I mean, I've always been into plants, but I got into studying
Yeah.
plants, and so yeah, we have to. We're around the same age, and I think that
Mhm.
something I've certainly learned, it sounds like you have too, is that life is never, it never kind of pans out like you think it's going to. And a lot of times it's for the better, right? We find our passions and we find the things that we love to do and want to do. And it just takes us a little bit of meandering to get there sometimes. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Yeah. No, thanks for that. I agree completely. What's interesting is I've always kind of felt that way. And that's advice that I would always tell other people is like, oh, you know what? Like, it's not necessarily going to be a traditional path for everybody, and that's okay. And, I never allowed myself that grace though.
Right.
Like I've always felt like, man, like I don't feel like I'm really pursuing what I should, what I want, and all that stuff. But just kind of like, did what was putting food on the table for family. And it wasn't until later on that, I think honestly, like I really grew up,
Yeah.
and just realized like, you know what, man, like I can change. I can make this decision to go a completely different path, because I'm still young. I think like,
Yeah.
I look, I'm from very traditional. I was raised kind of fundamentalist, in religion
Hmm.
and kind of worldview, in my opinion. And, that does not always cultivate a very open mindset
Sure. Sure.
by definition, right?
Sure.
Fundamentalist. And it took a long time, and that also is part of my like mental health journey and why I'm so open about it now. But yeah, so I'll kind of get back. So yeah, I grew up in the woods, grew up like doing that as kind of like my refuge, and I loved it. I always loved trees, but I did not for a second in my undergrad think I was going to end up studying trees or
Hmm.
anything to do with plants, honestly. And it wasn't until I kind of had this encounter with who is my advisor now, and Dr. Chad King at University of Central Oklahoma. And man, I think what it was for me was the practicality of dendrochronology. You take this increment borer, which is basically like a, depending on the size of tree you're wanting to core, but it's like a foot or longer, usually drill, essentially, just that you
Yeah.
crank by hand. And for anybody listening that doesn't know, I guess. And yeah, you drill into the tree about halfway, and you break the core off in the drill, and you retrieve it, and out comes this beautiful story of the growth of the tree, all its, oh, I mean, was there a drought in 1972? Was there a flood in, 1971? Was there,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
what's the story on the landscape? Were, Native Americans burning the landscape more frequently, and then the Euro colonizers came and they put an end to fire, or was it later on? I mean, like there's so many aspects, and I love the human um, dimension to it.
Yeah.
Is the trees tell the story regardless of whether people were there or not. And oh man, but anyways, back to that core, you pull it out and it's so amazing every time. And I love it. And I think it really spoke to my roots in like manual labor
Yeah.
and just get it done attitude. That was always like, it's just such a hands-on thing for me. And to have that intimate, I love woodworking too. I'm
Yeah.
not a very good woodworker, but I love it. And so I think it's like every time I get to core a tree, it really speaks to my raising of working hard, getting fruits of your labor, Um, and yeah, I love the whole process. And so anyways, yeah, then I decided to do a master's on it, and had a lot of mental health issues that delayed it, some trauma that occurred,
Sure.
so yeah, so I very slowly peck away at a thesis. I am not an all-star student, but I am one that will not quit.
Yep.
And yeah, so there you go. That's a lot, but that's there. I'll be done for a second there.
You know what? It's fun listening. It's fun actually getting to talk to you because, like I said, I followed some of your social media stuff, the stuff you post on YouTube, all of that, and we're very similar people in a lot of ways. I think.
Mm, yeah.
Listening to you talk is like I also am a semi-professional but really amateur woodworker. I turn a pen every now and then, and I'm like, cool, look, make a cutting
Yeah.
board, and I think I'm a cool guy, but like, it. I think I've approached school a lot of the same way. I, did my bachelor's and master's in a row because I thought I had to, and I did. And then I took a few years off and worked and ran a landscape company, worked for the extension service, a few other things before going back for my PhD. And like, I have never been an excellent student, but I've survived. Right. And I
Yeah.
think that, so we tell, okay, this is going to sound kind of off topic maybe, but so much of what we do is just tell stories, right? Like we figure out how to tell stories of our, and we tell them for ourselves and we tell them for those around us and all of that. And like you with the work that you do and how the trees tell the story of the past, we tell our own stories. And I think when we look at these stories, both in natural history and in humanity, like what we're asking is like, how do we keep surviving? How do we do the thing? Like, how do we keep being a human being? And how do we keep living on this planet and all of that stuff? And so that story of, I don't want to say struggle, but maybe struggle or hardship or just journey through an either whether it be academics or career or whatever is so important because when people listen to our stories, whether they realize it or not, I think they're asking the question, how did you make it to where you are? And how do I do that too? Right.
Yeah.
How do I survive whatever this weird experience we called life is?
Yeah.
And so I think the story you tell, both from your mental health journey to your, academic journey is so meaningful because that's what I think I said this recently to a colleague that, I teach undergrads, I teach freshmen mostly who can't decide if they actually want to be in my class or not. And it's non-majors intro horticulture, right? So they're in and out, whatever. Attendance drops the farther we get in the semester. But like, I'm very open about my personal struggles with them. Like if I'm behind on grading or something, like, look, I had a crappy week. It sucked. Because I think that helps them contextualize their own journey as young adults and as really still young humans. And so no, I think what you do is super important. I like the way you tell that story a lot.
Thanks for that. No, I mean, first off, I'll start with saying I 100% agree with everything you just said. I mean, to be a human is to be a storyteller and a listener to stories, and in my view, and I mean, we are always everything we do. I think of like, if everyone had a book of life and it's just constantly being filled with new lines, right? And some of us are aware that we're telling stories as we're going. Some of us aren't. I certainly struggle with being aware and staying in the moment myself, but I think that's what I really enjoy about listening to other people is because it allows me to just pause where I don't always naturally do that very well with myself and just listen. And I think too, the other thing is I just think everybody else's story is so much more interesting than my own. and naturally, because right, I mean, I'm bored with mine. I know my story.
Sure.
The nice thing is as I've matured, I realize there's a lot of beauty and a lot to learn from my own story. And I love that. And uh, yeah. So I mean, yeah, I love storytelling. I'm not like a natural storyteller, but I think what I can do is provide a platform and inspire others to tell their story.
Sure.
So that's um so the platform that I'm using right now is Twitter. I love Twitter
Yeah.
because Twitter is like a community for me, and it is exactly what I make it and what I allow it to be. I can block people, I can mute people
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
need to
Yeah.
do that. I can, and I follow almost everyone that follows me, and I love that. It's community, no matter what. Like, it's community. And so anyways, so the platform uses Twitter, but also like this additional platform that it doesn't have a lot of subscribers, doesn't have a lot, it's not a big deal, but I think what it is it's a storytelling platform in the format that goes by is by just a conversation.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I call it fireside chats, and basically it's me and one other scientist, and hands down 100% of the time the other scientist is like way more accomplished and way smarter and way better at everything, and I love that. I mean, because it, again, like, it presents an amazing story that's about to unfold. And having said that, it's short, ish, 30 to an hour, 30 minutes to an hour or
Yeah.
so. And it's just, hey, tell me, it's a lot like your podcast. And I think, which is why I enjoyed your podcast so much. And yeah, we are very similar, 30 somethings, have wives that are way better at everything than us. And
100%.
yeah. So, yeah. But, anyways, yeah, I love it. It provides connection. And I think what is so cool is we live in an age where you can talk to your heroes,
Yeah.
like, like just being able to send a direct message or comment on, somebody big's, post that they made, or, to be able to say, wow, that's awesome. And them say, oh, thanks. Like that, sometimes
Yeah.
that's huge. And you remember, like, when we were kids, like, you would literally have to write a letter,
Yeah.
and you didn't even know if that was a publicist who's writing you back or if it was the actual person.
If you got anything back at all.
If you got anything back, yeah. Was this really their signature, or do they have like somebody just scribble something,
Yeah.
And I mean, like, that's how it was for me. And but I just think it's so cool, the accessibility we have to people. And yeah, I love that. So I'll tell you something that it was huge for me when I realized it, but I didn't realize it at the time. So obviously I love connection. I need community. And so that was a big reason why, I even started this fireside chats thing.
Mm-hmm.
And what it was really born out of was a manic episode that I had. So I have bipolar disorder, Tourette syndrome, obsessive compulsive disorder, severe depression, anxiety. Like, I kind of struggle with a lot, but can still remain functional. Of course, obviously.
Yeah, sure.
But yeah. So basically, I've always felt like, man, I would love to just, like, man, wouldn't it be cool to just, like, help people tell their stories, or, man, to have conversations with these. I mean, just like we do, like, wouldn't it be cool to be able to sit down with some of these people? And so anyways, like, yeah, just one day I woke up and I was like, you know what? By God, I'm going to do it. It's going to be called Fireside Chats with Joe Buck in Nature. And and so I just started messaging people, like, out of nowhere, just like, hey, you want to come on? You want to come on? You want to come on? I didn't have a platform. I didn't have anything. That day, like, I bought 2 websites, designed a website, designed a couple logos. I mean, I did everything but stopped short right before, like, I purchased, like, merchandise. So, this is what happens. Sometimes you get on these, like, manic things and you're just, God, this is going to change the world. And I had the wherewithal, I did know this was not going to change the world, but it might change science, it might
Sure.
change something,
Yeah.
I mean, like, that day, like I did all this stuff and went to the store, and on my way, like I was on my way to the store to make sure, like I purchased, like, do I need a microphone, headset? What do I even need? I didn't know anything, man. I'm not like a technical savvy person.
Sure.
I'm just like most, people around my age that are somewhat decent. Right.
Yeah. Right.
And, and so, yeah, I was on my way to Walmart or Target or Best Buy or whatever it was. And, like there was a homeless person that is always at this corner, and my kids have given money to him. And, it's just, he's always there, but I saw him and I just, man, there's something in my head. And I just thought, this is a problem, right? Like homelessness, this is a problem.
Yeah.
And I think I can solve this. I think I can fix this. And so, like, my brain starts spinning and I'm driving and I'm like, man, like, who do I need to talk to? I need to talk to senators, I need to talk to Congress people, maybe the governor. Like, this is what happens. Like, this is why, like, Kanye West ran for president, right? Presumably.
Right.
Like, this is what happens in the mindset is you start having these, it's not like, for some people it is. Some people it's tied to ego, like, by everybody is an individual person, right?
Sure, of course.
Condition. And mine was not from some like ego grandiose, like I'm awesome kind of thing. Quite the opposite. I struggle way more with imposter syndrome and feeling like I'm not worth much, right? That's the depression side.
Yeah.
But for me, it was like, this is a moment where I can change everything,
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I had a lot going on that week. So I had this big week. I did like 2 chats that week,
Wow.
Started trying to put content on and, doing all this stuff. And yeah, by the end of that first week, I crashed. And like, I mean, like, it was like radio silence for several days and I just couldn't get up, man. Like, so that was how Fireside Chats became Fireside Chats with Joe Buck in Nature. And it was part of my mental health journey. But what is awesome is like the problem that the bipolar created was having something I have to do and maintain.
Sure. Right.
That in those moments usually is only attainable because you're manic. And what's awesome though is because of the medicine, the self-care, the journey that I've been on for the past year and a half, I have the ability to meet that challenge. And that's something that's pretty rare because usually, it's like homelessness. Like, I'm not going to solve homelessness by myself.
Sure.
Right. I abandoned that one, thankfully. I mean, I'm still, want to be a proponent.
Yeah.
But I'm obviously not going to single-handedly do anything with that. And, but yeah, so what's cool is like, yeah, so I think I've recorded now 16 or 17, posted one less than I recorded.
Okay.
And it's going amazing in my view because I enjoy it. And that's really what it's about is this enjoyable? Is this a conversation that people can relate to or find some information or connection with? And I think what is so amazing with podcasts like you do and with plant anthropology and with the Fireside Chats and all of these others is just like, these are conversations with people that we would, well, at least that I find interesting and good people. And that's what I try to focus on, people that for as far as I can tell, are really good, genuine people who have done amazing things or just have a great story to tell. And it's so rewarding for me personally. And my thing is, I really hope it's rewarding for other people too. So
that's well, and passion is contagious. I have always said that, always thought that. So like, and that's true in education. That's true in science communication, like everything we do. Like if you love it, it comes across. Right. Like,
right.
If you're just doing it, like, okay, I've got, and that's the difference between, I think, the shows that I listen to and the content that I consume the most is if the person producing it clearly is enjoying it. Gosh, it's so much easier for me to get into it. Right.
Yeah.
Like, you could have the best content, so to speak, but if you don't care, if you're not passionate, then it's so much harder for people to really like latch on and really to love it. So I think you do a great job of that.
Oh,
But
thanks for that.
we'll take a quick break, just real quick, and I'll play a trailer at you or something. And when I go back and record it later, who knows what's going to come out of my mouth. And then when we come back, I want to talk a little bit more about. I want to dig in a little bit to the meat of like dendrochronology and some of the other like science that you do. So we'll be right back. Well, hey there. Welcome to the midroll. It's so nice to see you here. Y'all, I don't know why I feel the need to be so creepy at the beginning of the mid-roll every episode, but here we are. I'll tell you, this has nothing to do with the episode, but we got our teaching evaluations back from this past semester, and one of my students, I don't know if it was a he or she or whatever, but one of their only comments was, his voice is high-pitched. Y'all, is my voice high-pitched? I don't feel like it is, but maybe it is sometimes when I get excited. I don't know. It doesn't matter. It makes no bearing on my life, but I have not been able to stop thinking about it. It made me laugh for one thing, but is my voice high pitched? Connect and let me know. It doesn't matter. But as far as connecting goes, I hope you'll connect with Planthropology in all the places. Look us up on Twitter. We are Planthropology _ on Twitter, Planthropology Pod on Instagram, Planthropology on Facebook, and we also have a wonderful Facebook group with some of the coolest plant people you'll meet called Planthropology's Cool Plant People. That's right, it's well named. I'm also on TikTok as @theplant_prof. Y'all, I don't know. TikTok's fun. I'm way too old to be on there, but it's a lot of fun. I don't have a trailer or anything to play for you, as past Vikram suggested that I might, but I do have a request. So today is June 2nd. My birthday, my 34th birthday, is 1 month from today on July 2nd. And if y'all wanted to get me a birthday present, I would love a late rating and review for the show. So if you don't mind hopping over to Apple Podcasts or Podchaser or Castbox or anywhere that you're listening, if you can leave a rating and review for me, I would be so grateful, and I will do you one even better. And if you take a screenshot of it and send it to me, I'll send you a sticker and some other stuff. Yes, there are still stickers that have to go out. I know there are some of you that have been waiting for a sticker for like 300 years. You're going to get a sticker. It's summer now. I have survived a semester. My voice is high pitched, and I'll have some time to get those out really, really pretty soon. And you may also get some other swag as a thank you for it taking so long. But yeah, if you'll leave me a rating and review, I would really very much appreciate it. I love reading them. I love making sure that I'm doing the things that you like to hear. It helps with, at least depending on who you ask, it may help with exposure for the show. But really, I just want to hear from you. Also, if you are a Twitter person, I am like 150 followers away from 2,000 followers on Twitter. Now, that is solely for my own vanity that I want to hit 2,000 by my birthday. But y'all, here we are. I do. So if you're on Twitter, go follow me at Planthropology _ I would really appreciate that a lot. But yeah, that's all I got for you. And get ready to talk about tree rings, dendrochronology, fire, more about mental health, and about the future in the second half of this episode. Ready, go. All right, we are back. I hope you enjoyed whatever it was you just listened to. So we were talking about, before the break, everything that goes into some of the communications and in Joe's history and all of that. But I want to get into like some of the specifics maybe of both your master's research and like the field of dendrochronology. We talked about the story that we can tell, but I'm curious about like some of the specifics, and I think a lot of people would be too. And then I want to talk fire ecology a little bit too, because I think that is so fascinating. But okay, so dendrochronology, like at the very basic level, what does that mean? What is dendrochronology?
Yeah. Okay. Well, oh boy, dendrochronology at the basic level, right? So dendro means tree. chronos or is time,
Yeah.
right? And ology is study of. So it's, um, basically using tree rings to uh, look at changes in time. So what we can tell from a tree is so it, and this depends, right? Like, so tropical trees are a little different,
Yeah.
and some others, but we'll exclude those for right now. So trees where I live, where you live, right? For the most part, every year they start they put on leaves in spring, right? So when they do that, they're starting to grow,
Right.
right? Photosynthesis is happening. They're growing both in length and in girth, and when they're growing wide, that secondary growth, it's creating a tree ring.
Yeah.
All right. So this is early wood, what we call early wood. And so at a certain point, the tree's going to slow down its growth. Okay. And so, like late summer, early fall, before the leaves all come off,
Hmm.
um, it's going to put on a different kind of ring. So early growth is like, oh man, it's a party, like, tons of growth. And these rings are, or the cells are large, the vessels are large, and they're distinctively different from the second ring, which is late wood. And so what this does is it creates this pairing, right? So you have early wood and late wood. So you have one ring that has two rings in it, basically.
Gotcha.
All right. So
Yeah.
I know it's kind of confusing, but early wood, late year, and we call that that's a ring,
Yeah.
right? It's an annual ring. Every year, this tree is going to be doing that. Now, depending on how wet it is, that early wood, late wood, whichever, may be small, may be large, depending on how much nutrients there are, depending on how much, how much sunlight, the temperature, all these environmental factors are. If it was shaded out, maybe a tree grew up and over a couple of years and shaded it out, so it slowed its growth.
Right.
It's going to have smaller growth rings. So all these differences are going to change the ring patterns. And maybe you had 2 good years and there'll be wide rings, and then you had a drought, and so you'll have a really small ring, and then you'll have maybe just a couple years that are normal, and so eventually it creates this pattern of drought, normal, flood, normal, drought, whatever.
Right.
And these patterns can be aligned, and we can figure out the age of these trees. Oaks are really nice because they're super reliable, they don't have false rings and all of that, and
Right.
those are the trees that I mostly get to look at, which is
Okay.
awesome. Because some people that study like junipers, they throw in false rings and different things, but yeah, I think I went way more than
No, that's perfect. That's perfect. Because I mean
that
that
was not simple.
no, it doesn't have to be simple. Science isn't simple. No, that's perfect. And is there a specific species of oak you work with more than others?
Yeah, so I mostly do post oaks and
Okay.
blackjack oak, and also black oak
Okay.
at one of the study sites. Has some black oak on it, but post oak mostly. That's it's super reliable. Whenever you see one specimen or one species under a microscope, it's really nice. You really, like a dendrochronologist in their local area or whatever study site they see day in day out,
Yeah.
so to speak. They memorize these patterns, and
Wow.
it's really cool. So like you'll talk to somebody from like Ohio or somebody on the East Coast, West Coast, and then Central or wherever, and we all have like these memorized chronologies
Hmm.
essentially. So like I could tell you like for sure in Oklahoma, like 1953, man, that was like really dry, and or like 55, and then 1981 was dry and really narrow rings,
Yeah.
and 1996. So like these are called marker years, and they really help us when we sit down with the sample. We can real quickly pinpoint like, okay, yeah, this seems to be in line. Like I can tell how old this tree was.
That's awesome. So
Yeah,
cool.
it's pretty cool.
Well, and and I was we have a windbreak around. So part of my job is, running this horticultural garden on campus here at Texas Tech, and
Yeah.
we have a windbreak of eastern red cedar on the south and southwest side of our property
Hmm.
here. And the trees were planted too close. They've had some tip blight and some other stuff, and so they're dying back. So we've had to cut down a few. And I was showing some of it to one of my student assistants, and I was like, "Oh yeah, so this side was facing south. This side, the prevailing wind came from here. This was a dry year. Here's when somebody probably barked it with a weed eater or something." And
Uh-huh.
they were like, why do you know that?" like, oh, the story is just so cool. Like
Yeah.
based on the way that trees lay in reaction wood is a
Mhm.
response to like the force of the wind, and you can and the way they compartmentalize damage, and all of this stuff tells, like you say, such a cool story about our environment, local and beyond.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it's super fascinating. One of the most fascinating things to me is one of my good friends and colleagues, Justin Cheek. He's doing his master's at UCO, where I'm at. His is more focused on growth release after timber harvesting.
Okay.
And so he's finding like some 200 plus year old oaks and hickories, and like you can tell when they're removed, or like when people came in and logged it, because there's this huge growth release. And so
Hmm.
like the forest really started to spring up, or the trees that weren't cut, that
Yeah.
is,
Yeah.
because now they have all this abundance of sunlight. So the next couple of years, like, man, they are just growing fast, these really wide tree rings. So you can correlate that and tell when events happened. There's been people that have done it on like landslides or avalanche or hurricanes or tornadoes. Lots of
Wow.
growth releases. That's all cool to me. I haven't done any growth release stuff really, so I think that's a
That's
cool story. I mean, it's just part of the story that you can tell, and like the story with fire as well. And that's an angle that I'm looking at with my masters as well.
cool. So how does that factor in? Because we've talked on the show a lot. I have a friend. I don't know if you've listened to it. With Matt McEwen,
Mm,
who studied fire and stuff like this, was a while back, and he said we are a fire people, and this is a
mm,
fire planet.
mm.
And I thought that was really an interesting way to think about that. So, can you talk a little bit about the relation between fire and tree growth and just the kind of ecosystem, and
Mhm.
in whatever capacity you want to or can?
Yeah, yeah. Well, let's go with can, because that's my limiting factor. No, so oh god, man, fire is such a cool topic, and I completely agree. I mean, humans are fire people. Like, I mean, that's just our there have been so many gifted authors that have written books on the intimate relationship humans have with fire. And I mean, they're all fascinating. No matter the writing style, like, it's just such a cool topic. So yeah, I mean, like, fire is, in my view, it is a landscape creator, destroyer. Basically, it's like it's the potter to landscape being the clay, in
Huh.
my view. And I mean, you think, if, for instance, on my study site, it's our little eco region that runs, basically this little narrow strip that runs from the south of Kansas to the north of Texas, just right down the center of Oklahoma. Basically, it's called the Cross Timbers Eco Region, and it's like a post oak, blackjack oak dominated forest or woodland, savanna. So it's like an oak savanna, and um, there's lots of ways to describe it, like a mosaic
Hmm.
or patchwork, or whatever. It's
Yeah.
essentially like this edge community, a wide edge community where the prairie meets the eastern deciduous forest, and um, yeah, and this is all because of fire. Like, the every historically, I mean, every 2 to 4 years or so, on average, like, a fire would have been caused by like a lightning strike, or a person lighting it intentionally for
Sure.
whatever purposes. And it burns all the underbrush. It burns out these mesic species. And that's why, like in the past, eastern red cedar was confined to riparian areas or like cliffs where fire couldn't, had no fuels to reach it. And so what was left was just this kind of oak woodland with lots of native grasses, prairie grasses in between. And that is what it would normally look like. So that's the story of kind of oak, woodland, savanna with fire present. However, what we're seeing today in the cross timbers and a lot of different places too, but I'll speak to my area, is this mesification happening where all these species like common ones are like hackberry, sugarberry. Let's see, lots of elms get thrown in there, eastern red cedar, lots of invasive species. Oh my gosh, lots of exotic invasives. Like tree of heaven's a big one.
That makes my teeth itch when you say it. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. And like different privet species, like Chinese privet. Then we have like some really bad invaders. Oh gosh, I'm trying to think. There's so many. Like they're all getting like kind of swarming in my head. What is it? Lonicera japonica.
That Japanese honeysuckle.
Yeah. And then there's like macchiato. Yeah, so there's these different honeysuckles that are non-native. So yeah, and it's like they're taking over and changing the forest, and this is all because we excluded fire. So like in the early 1900s, we had this policy of fire seclusion as a national policy, and so it basically, like, we're still trying to restore the cross timbers region to what it used to be by using fire, prescribed burns, controlled burns. But it's very piecemeal. There are some farmers, ranchers that do it for grazing purposes or farming purposes. There's some people who do it purely from the ecological, standpoint. Those are fewer and far between in Oklahoma. But fire is used and seen as a management tool for people who want to have more deer or turkeys.
Sure.
And that's a great in to get people to jump on the fire bandwagon. But the thing is, like, we have evidence that we know that Native Americans, indigenous people to this land, were burning both for cultural purposes, for their own land management purposes as well, hunting, possibly for like in warfare as well, with like European colonizers. And so anyways, we have evidence that they were burning a lot. And then when the Europeans came and Euro Americans came and settled, we had shifts in fire regimes, and so it started to change the landscape. So it's so interesting because the exclusion of fire or the presence of fire totally changes the landscape. It's amazing. It's amazing.
Well, and I think it's interesting to hear you talk about this post oak savanna, because I did my undergrad at Texas A&M, which College Station, that area of Texas, is sort of at that southern edge of this great post oak savanna. And I think about what's between College Station, Texas, and where you are in Oklahoma, and there is the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex, all of these different things that break up now what used to be this vast prairie forest. Is a weird thing to say, but that's what it was, right?
Yeah.
It's an old growth prairie forest, and some of these post oaks are hundreds of years old, and super sensitive to, that's something we talked a lot about when I was at A&M, is that we have all these old growth, beautiful post oaks and all these, riverbeds and prairie areas, and people would build houses, and the root systems are sensitive to disruption. So they'd, pour a patio or something and kill this 200-year-old tree. And but then you think about managing fire through this land. It's like, oh, you can't have a big fire go through the middle of downtown Dallas. That's a problem. And so the way that ecosystems and native landscapes evolve over time is so strange and fascinating,
Hmm.
um, based on human intervention and human development and all of that. But
Yeah.
you talk about the management of indigenous peoples for on this land for
Oh
thousands of
yeah.
years, and we have a place out here, and I think I've talked about this on a previous episode called the Lubbock Lake Landmark, and we're at the headwaters here of one of the tributaries for the Brazos River. That meets up with the Red River in different places and ends up in the Gulf of Mexico,
Hmm.
and they found charred fossilized root material and bark material from mesquite trees that they've carbon dated for hundreds or thousands of years. So
Yeah.
yeah,
So
there was
cool.
active management on this land. It was
Yeah.
the concept of pristine nature is, there's a lot wrapped up in that, but it's kind of not real. It kind of doesn't exist.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh man, that is one of my favorite topics is, Stephen Pine, he's an author of a lot of fire on the landscape kind of
Hmm.
books and kind of looking at things from an anthropologic standpoint. And that's what he would call first fire is, kind of like this fire as a tool, fire, you know, nature as it was before we kind of developed this farming community
Hmm.
system for humanity. Basically like civilization
Yeah.
as farmers, right?
Yeah.
And that seems to be so much more in line with nature. Um, and what indigenous peoples have done, the world over, historically speaking, before we had, huge cities and, things to break up the cross timbers, right? Like, it would be patchwork of burning here, patchwork of burning there, kind of move around, change around. And it created what nature would have created anyway,
Yeah.
like, lightning strikes and it burns until it gets to a fire break, like a river or
Right.
a beaver pond, or
Yeah.
whatever it
Yeah.
is. And yeah, so people used to do that. And people still do that in some ways, but on smaller scales and different scales for different reasons.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, we certainly have had huge cultural losses in the forced migration of people. Um, and and when I say cultural loss, I mean, like, yes, their culture, absolutely. We also have, I think of as like kind of the land's culture.
Yeah.
What was the land for millennia when people were way more in tune with nature, and used it more in harmony. I'm not saying this as like, esoteric, I mean, like, no, really, like, practically, you know, species have co-evolved in these regions for a reason,
Yeah.
and by drivers and forces. And when we have changed those up, it really, it's devastating, in a lot of ways.
Yeah, it's and that's such a big topic, and more
Yeah.
than we can cover in one
Oh
episode.
yeah.
But I think but that's a theme that keeps coming up throughout. Because I've talked to, at this point, I don't even remember what episode number this is going to be, but it's
Mhm.
in the 50s somewhere. I think I don't know. I've lost count at some point. But that's something that's come up with a lot of the folks that I've talked to, is that our relationship to the land,
Mhm.
we are in this mindset of bending it to our will,
Yeah.
in a lot of ways, when nature wants to do what it wants to do. And again, I'm anthropomorphizing here, but
Mhm.
there's things that nature does because they work. Those things work. And without our intervention, like, nature tends to try to reset to some of these things, or
Yeah.
adapt to the new challenges we've given it. And it's an interesting study, and I'm glad there are people studying it. I'm glad we're looking into our natural history, and I don't know that we're ever going to go back to managing the land in that way. I think our society has gone in different directions as a globally, as a global
Yeah.
population.
Yeah.
But I do think there are things we can do to live maybe better with our planet, and unfortunately it's taken us it's taken us getting to the brink of climate disaster
Yeah.
to really start talking about it. And that's a hard truth, but that's a truth.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, it's so typical for human behavior, right? To get, you got to hit rock bottom. I mean, we use that idiom all the time, like you got to hit rock bottom before you can climb back up. And unfortunately, like, it's true. That's kind of typical for humans. But I think looking on kind of the bright side of this issue is that you do have, and they don't always do it the best way. We're still figuring out things. But what I love to see is like conservation groups like the Nature Conservancy, or
Hmm.
there's a lot of like local groups and chapters of different organizations who, through, philanthropy is not my favorite mode of change, but
Sure.
through philanthropy and through other, uh, modes, um, there is at least a land ethic of sorts being reintroduced and spreading. Like as Nature Conservancy and these other groups expand their influence and just their presence and their land
Hmm.
accumulated,
Yeah.
right? Like larger preserves and more of them. We're getting patchworks where if we can keep that, like if we can keep that trend going, keep developing those, restoring those areas, and keep working with, I think, indigenous wisdom keepers who can, provide really good informed traditions meshed with what we know in science. I think, there's a trend there that if we keep that going and keep giving it good momentum, like we can preserve a lot for future generations. There's a lot of work to be done on that front, but yeah, I think that's the path forward, because yeah, I don't know what other alternatives there are. Cities are going to grow, um
Yeah.
and maybe, like we just keep informing the next generations, and they'll provide that sea change maybe.
No, I agree, and I think there is so much to be encouraged about. I really do, and I
Yeah.
know it's easy working in this field sometimes and seeing what we see and studying what we
Yeah.
study to get down. But
Yeah.
gosh, there are a lot of good people doing a lot of good work, and
Yes.
I think that as long as we keep, kind of like you say, as long as we keep moving in the right direction and keep striving, I think change and education are both long and repetitive processes,
Hmm.
but we'll get there, right? I
Yeah.
think we make progress, we take the wins where we can, and keep moving forward.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think, like one thing, I've learned how resilient I am, and I didn't used to know that about myself and other people, is it's really easy to see all the times you fall down, you know, and it's really hard to remember that you keep falling down because you're still going,
Yeah,
right? Like you still got fight, and you still get up. And like you said, it can be dismal in this field, especially if you have mental health struggles. If you're prone to depression, this can be a really difficult thing, is to think about restoration and the future of humanity and the land and all that. But I think the fact is that um, the world does have a lot of good people, and uh, dynamics are, they're dynamic. I mean, it's dynamic.
yeah,
Humanity's dynamic. It's always changing. Generations change. We have more people having less babies, and we have. But that will change too. Then there will be population growth, and these. It's just dynamic,
yeah,
and I don't have answers as to what's right, what's wrong, or whatever. But I just know, like, I love nature, and I don't. It's hard pressed to find people. There are people. There are some real Scrooges out there, nature Scrooges.
yeah,
I've met them from time to time. It's like,
yeah.
what?
It's
Like,
always weird.
yeah, like I don't know what to say to you, man. Like, but no, I think, that's the thing, is like most people, it's just about getting out there and seeing it. And that's, I love, like, podcasts like this. They're so inspiring to people. maybe not mine, but somebody's will
No,
be,
yours is
you know.
great.
But like it's so cool to just hear how much people care.
Yeah.
And I think that's the biggest thing for me is inspiration. Like if there is somebody who's out there able to speak something inspiring, and share it and, throw their full weight of enthusiasm and passion behind it, like, man, I'll do it. Like I'll listen to it and then
Yeah.
I'll go do whatever it is they said, because I'm just like, yeah, okay, you're a leader. I'll follow you.
Yeah.
And I think there is just a lot of good to find in this realm. And so yeah, I would encourage like anybody listening or anything like that. There are so many cool groups that will allow you the opportunity to come out and visit their places, hear their talks, or like do the work. There's like lots of cool. I know like the nature. I'm talking about the Nature Conservancy just because I guess that's kind of what I know of in my area.
Yeah.
But they do like these annual and semi-annual events where they'll allow you to come out, like, they'll tell you all about the place. You get to get out and immerse yourself in it with a guided, tour of it. And it's so cool. I mean, you don't even have to do any work except just get yourself there and they do the rest. And,
Yeah.
you're just inspired. And yeah, I don't know, man, there's no shortage of inspiration except just the motivation, get stuff out of the chair, I guess.
No, I hear you, man. I
Which
hear
is a
you.
challenge itself.
Oh, sure it
right
is.
now.
Sure it is. Oh yeah, no, 100%. And you kind of just you answered my last question that I always ask guests, but I'm going to ask it anyway in case there's something else that pops into your head.
No, there will be, I assure you.
but yeah, so man, we've talked about a lot of great stuff, and just to kind of wrap up, I always like to ask, if there's something you could leave people with, like one thing that's a take-home message about anything we've talked about, or shoot, anything in general life. What would that be? What would you like our listeners to like hang on to from this episode with Joe Buck?
What a great question. Oh. Okay. Obviously, there's a reason why I do interviews and I ask other people questions, because I have an obvious tendency to just ramble. So let me, in summation, what I would love for people to just not forget, I think, is that we all have ideas, and we all have what inspires us. We all kind of have our thing, whether it's developed or not. And I would just really like to encourage everyone to, there's not necessarily a thing or one thing that is meant to be yours, or, whatever, but whatever it is that you're interested in the fields that you're in, like, man, you just put all your damn weight behind that and you push, like, just go for it.
Yeah.
I have like a multitude of jobs and past experiences that have enabled me to do what I am doing right now. And if I hadn't have just done whatever it was I was doing, I'd never be able to do what I do right now.
Yeah.
And so I would just, like to say that connect with people early. That I think that sorry, this is a complete different point, but this is the one right here. Okay. Ignore what I said earlier. Oh God, Vikram, I'm so sorry.
No, you're great.
This is it. This is it. Okay. Connections. Make lots of connections. I don't care if it's on Twitter or if it's Instagram, whatever it is. And by God, I'm so excited to get back out and actually make, even though I'm like have social anxiety, I'm still excited to make real social connections with people again.
Yeah. Yeah.
And but do that, like go places, see people, and just introduce yourself. Because man, like we can't do near as much by ourselves as we can do together. And so the more people you connect to, the more opportunities you're going to have to do whatever it is you're passionate about. So yeah,
that's awesome.
That's my one thing right there.
No, I like it. It's great. Perfect. Well, so speaking of connections, where all do we find you? We've talked about a few of the spots that and things we do, but where can people look you up?
Okay. Well, Twitter's my jam. So like at Joe Buck in Nature
Okay.
It is as simple as it sounds. It's literally JOEBUCK. IN nature, because I don't know if I can spell nature, honestly. So, yeah, that's it. And I do have a website. It's www.joebucketnature.
Okay, I like it's themed well. I like it. You're
Bikram, I have to keep things simple, man. That's how I make it. And so yeah, like you could go to those places. That'll link you to like kind of my dendro consultancy work.
Okay.
Fireside chats. They're just fun. Like you get to see people, and I like that. And then like some Instagram stuff. I post like tree rings and things on Twitter and Instagram, and
cool.
It's fun. Little nature inspo.
Yeah, that's rad. I love it. I'll link all that in the show notes and make sure people can find you. But man, I appreciate it so much. That was a lot of fun.
All right, cool. I did too, man. Thanks so much for having me on, Vikram. Like your podcast, your presence, I love your voice, like everything about it. You show up in a way that just makes you happy to be here, you know? So yeah.
I appreciate it. That was a lot of fun. And I think that was one that our listeners will really have enjoyed, and hopefully they'll reach out and get in touch with you and follow along with all the cool stuff you do.
Awesome. Yeah. I welcome everyone. So yeah.
All right. Well, y'all, thanks for listening. I think you people are the best. And I hope that your summer, or I don't know what today is, whatever day this comes out, early June, probably. I hope your spring is wrapping up well, your summer's starting well, and whatever you're doing, I hope you are staying safe, staying well, and being cool. So we will talk to you next time, and y'all are awesome. Y'all, were you inspired? I was inspired. Joe said something to the effect in this episode of, if you keep falling down, it's because you're still going. It means you are still going. It means that you have gotten back up to fall back down. We all fall down, friends. We do. But the fact that you're still going, and the fact that you still have the capacity to fall down and get back up, says so much about you. So I hope whatever your struggles are, if you deal with mental health issues, which I think we all do to some extent, find someone to talk to. Find someone who can help you. There are people out there that want to help you, that are trained to help you. And find a friend, family member, a professional. If you need someone to talk to, find someone to talk to. And if you're like Joe, he has used his struggles for so much good, and that's something that I aspire to, and that's something that inspires me. So again, I hope that you left this episode feeling good about the world and feeling good about our future. Thanks so much to the Texas Tech Department of Plant and Soil Science for sponsoring this show, for letting me do this show, and for all the constant support. Dr. Ritchie, our department chair, has been such a big fan of the show and such a big just cheerleader as we've gone through this process, and I cannot thank him and my colleagues and the college enough for the support. Again, follow us on social media, all the places. Next week, I will be back with an episode that was supposed to come out last week. We'll be talking about rain. Rain is one of my favorite things. And I'm behind a little bit on my Plants in World Tradition series, but I promise we're going to get caught up. So thanks for listening. Y'all are the best. And I will talk to you next week. Stay safe and keep being cool.